All right, yet another update on my 85 XJ700 Maxim. After my initial carb rebuild, checking the valves, which were good, color tuning and syncing, as I alluded to in another video, I had an issue with fuel supply. My vacuum operated petcock wasn't working right. It was barely flowing fuel. My vacuum tube was good, but I had a bunch of air in there. The fuel level was way down where the inlet is, and it was running like it was fuel starved. I replaced the vacuum operated petcock with this manual non-vacuum, just on-off reserve from xjforever.com. That's like the number 4, not the word 4. And it works great. Solid fuel all the way down to the carburetor. It's in the off position now, but no air bubbles or anything. Initially, when I carb tuned this, I started off with the base setting of 2.5 turns out on the pilot mixture screws, and I kind of played around with that. Never really got it where I wanted. I'd take it out for a ride, and it just didn't feel like it was running strong, especially at interstate speeds. It seemed to act like it was starved for fuel. And so today I decided to go ahead and hook my color tune up again, and what I ended up doing, I think these things like to be towards the leaner side. It's got the OEM size pilot and main jets in it right now. And what I did was I screwed each mixture screw in totally. Most of them, you know, as you got maybe within about a half a turn, the cylinder started cutting out. You'd see in the color tune that it wasn't, you know, didn't have combustion on each cycle. And what I ended up getting at was 1 turn out, and I'm at 1.5 turns right now. I just went just a little bit more rich from that position. And that's compared to, you know, 2.5 turns up to like 3.25 turns. And something I noticed is that my number 4 cylinder, after I did the color tune on it and put the carb boot back on it, it was kind of, oops, sorry about that. This boot was rotated over towards here, and it was actually arcing from here to the cylinder. And I went ahead and pulled this up and found that my carb boot wasn't threaded all the way in to where it was making a good connection with the wire. I thought at first maybe I need to strip some of the insulation back to expose a little bit more wire, but it was all the way to the end. It just wasn't in all the way, so it was just kind of getting an intermittent connection there. So I did that, corrected that, and I just took it for a ride. Man, this thing rips now. The idle is much smoother, nice and consistent. Let me go ahead and fire it up. I just got back from a ride about 5 minutes ago. I was hearing kind of an intermittent ticking sound, and it must have been this arcing. I just didn't really wasn't paying attention, wasn't seeing it, but has a much nicer idle now. Returns to a nice idle. Sounds like it's got a good sync on it. So after my initial carb overhaul, in which I replaced the butterfly shaft seals and put it back to OEM brand new jets, new needles and seats, new screens in the fuel inlets. The issues I was having was a combination of things. That arcing on that plug boot, I went and verified all the other ones weren't doing that, and I didn't find that to be the case. But I think overall it's really was just my fuel supply issue, and you know, my initial carb settings were just too rich. And the reason I say that is I think what was happening, you know, fuel supply at higher speeds anyway, and my intermittent arcing on that number 4 cylinder, I think since I had it set rich, I was, you know, that increased the idle RPM, so I was backing the butterflies off to get the idle speed down where it was, and or where it needed to be. And something I was noticing is that when I had full choke on a cold engine start, you know, it would start immediately, but it was really idling with the choke fully on, you know, right around 1200 RPM. And after just, you know, a minute of that, if I turned the choke all the way off, I mean, it was just barely idling, you know, maybe at like 400 RPM. And it would slowly come up. But since I leaned those mixtures down, of course I had to raise the idle speed, so that opened the butterflies a little more. And I think what was happening is I just didn't have that that outlet, you know, for the pilot mixture to come out open far enough. And the combination of being overly rich and then adding more fuel off that enricher circuit, it was just way too rich. So since I've done that, when I start it cold with the choke on, it's idling up more like, you know, close to, actually a little over 2000 RPM, like maybe even 2500. And when I go to a half choke, you know, it's more like 1800, 2000, somewhere in that area. And after about, you know, close to a minute, if I turn it off, it's idling a little bit lower than where it needs to be, but after just maybe a minute of running at idle with no enricher on, it settles right into, like, you know, right around 1100, maybe between 1000 and 1100, somewhere in that area, which is where it needs to be. So the takeaway is that 2.5 turns out on the mixture screws is just kind of a good baseline setting, I think. You know, that will ensure that it starts up easily, that sort of thing. But I think these things really need to be a little bit on the leaner side as far as the pilot circuit goes. So, you know, using that color tune, going back through it a second time, I think really helped me to get it more dialed in. And, you know, after my little test ride I did, it runs really good, nice and crisp, has good acceleration, just snaps right back to a nice idle. Sit there and idle like that for an extended period of time. You know, before, the issue I was having is that, you know, it was loading up at idle and didn't seem to want to carburate real cleanly, taking off from a dead stop. You know, now it doesn't do that at all. So I think I have this thing tuned the way I want it now. Really happy with the way it's running now. It's an ongoing saga, it seems like. But now that I got this plug boot fixed, hopefully that will eliminate that issue. And fuel supply working good now. Got those pilot mixtures set where I want them. So I'm gonna ride it like this and try to see what my fuel mileage is, because before it didn't seem like it was that good with the combination of those problems. I think tuned the way it needed to be tuned and getting it where it needs to be, you know, that's probably gonna improve that drastically. And I've been checking temps too. I'm running right in the temperature range that these air-cooled engines need to run at, which of course is higher than a liquid-cooled engine. that's regulated. And yeah, real happy with how it's running now. All right, thanks guys.